All right, everybody, here we go. Let's get right into it. Re-education camp number 5, or as our loyal diehard listeners call it, the re-education camp bus. I've noticed
Mhm.
one of
Mhm.
our loyal fans, shall we say, on Rumble, has kind of coined that phrase. But lots going on this week, Karen. Happy to be back, and I think we wanted to kick off the start of the show this week with addressing a bit of backlash, you say?
Yes, yeah, we had a little bit of backlash, which is, that occurs, that happens sometimes when you put your thoughts out there, and sometimes you don't measure your words as well as you maybe should. And so last week we talked a little bit about the coal region of Pennsylvania, and I was describing my 4th of July, and I don't think I got to completely flesh out the conversation I was having. And we were just talking about the coal region that can be related to a lot of impoverished, predominantly white communities, rural communities in America, which I believe there are many. And I think that people thought I was being a little bit too critical of the population of the coal region, and not necessarily because I was too critical, but just it wasn't really a good representation of how I truly feel about the coal region. I think some of it came off a little bit harsh.
You love the coal
So
region. I know
yes, I
that
do.
about you.
Yes,
You always
I love.
have. That was one of
Yes,
your
I love.
defining characteristics. Your love and your passion for exploring old mine shafts and all
My one
that
friend calls
stuff.
me a breaker boy.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much are. You're like a breaker gal.
Breaker gal. But yeah, so it really wasn't just that. It wasn't the coal region itself. It was just that the we talked a little bit. And I think I made it sound as if being impoverished or dealing with poverty, that those people are somehow undignified. So I just wanted to clear the air and explain that I think that there can be dignity in poverty. I think that there are a lot of dignified, kind of the salt of the earth individuals that live in poverty. And my family certainly doesn't come from a wealthy, waspy background. So I did want to explain that, like I said, I think that there could be dignity in poverty. And I certainly know some wealthy people that are wholly undignified. And I also wanted to say that even, I think of poverty, I think that you and I have kind of discussed behind the scenes. I don't know if it's come up on the show about how a lot of the corporate and government interest are completely they have a desire to keep people kind of subservient and keep them in poverty and keep them on social programs for their own benefit, and not necessarily the benefit of people. And before somebody goes out there and freaks out that I'm saying that I'm criticizing social programs, I do want to say, number one, that I have been on disability and have been a beneficiary of the social safety net. But I also want to clarify that it's a net, a social safety net. And what does a net make you think of? What do you think of when you think of a net? A net is not, you cast the net out to bring the fish on board, to bring them onto the boat. We don't cast out a net to then keep the fish in the net and keep, chugging the boat along, and the fish have to, they're just being drug along while the rest of us are hanging out in the boat. And that's, I think, really a good explanation of where these programs have kind of found themselves, that they no longer serve as a net to bring people back in the boat. These people that control the boat or drive the boat don't want those people back in the boat. They want them in the net, cast aside, dragging along on the side of the boat, as long as they vote for them or they don't vote for at all. So yeah, so that's just I just wanted to clarify that I don't consider myself somebody that looks down on really anyone. So, or at least I try not to.
And I know
And
that about
sometimes,
you,
yes,
sincerely.
yeah. So I think the criticism was more that I was coming off, I was channeling a little bit of my inner snarkiness a little bit too much. So I just wanted to just clarify that. So I don't want to take too much time on that because we've got bigger fish to fry.
I love how
So
you used a fishing analogy, by the way, when I was thinking more along the lines of the high wire performer in the circus analogy, the
yes,
person that walks the what is it, the balance beam with the
yes,
little
yeah,
pole, and the
yeah,
net's there to catch
to
them just in
catch them,
case they
yeah.
should lose their balance. It's not supposed to be a permanent home. But one thing I will say quite candidly, as you know, I've been going through a little bit of some employment difficulties, shall we say. And I'll tell you what, it's in order to get on some of these social programs. Oh my lord, I looked into trying to get on some of them. You've got to have multiple children and have less than 2K in your bank account. You've really
Oh,
got to be it's not something like I, I always hear about people who complain about social programs talking about like, oh, well, there's all these people just living on welfare. And I'm asking the question, how did they get on that welfare? Because it seems it seems near
a gig.
impossible.
Yeah, no, and I think that could something we could explore at another time. But there's a lot
Yeah.
of ins and outs, and some people, it's almost like they're kind of almost like geniuses in figuring out how the system works because there's so
Seems
many
easier to get a
hoops to jump.
job, I'll tell you.
Yes, yes, it does. And to be honest with you, like that's so true. Like that's what I found. Like I was, like we talked about before, like in and out of the hospital for 2 years. And, I paid into disability. So over my working lifetime, and like you said, it's a safety net. So I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm not ashamed. I think that people should discuss those things more. Um, but I know for myself, I was like so happy to get back to just making an income and being back to working because like you said, there's so much that it limits you in so many ways. And it's not just like monetarily, but it's also like mentally limits a lot of people. So it kind of it makes it hard for people to kind of improve themselves because they kind of reward you for not working in a lot of ways. They reward you for, like you said, you can only have so much money in your bank. Well,
Yeah.
you're never going to save any money because they kind of discourage you from doing so. And a lot of people too, they're afraid. I know I've seen working single moms that are afraid to take pay raises because they'll lose their childcare. So there's a lot of, we're not here to fix that. We're not here to fix anything.
We are just here to have a few laughs, have a few chuckles as we,
Yeah.
amidst the backdrop of the collapse of Western civilization, which we are
Yes.
continuously hurtling towards. And I guess the biggest thing I wanted to start off with is our president, Mr. Joseph R. Biden, has formally announced the activation of 3,000 reserve troops to Europe for Operation North Atlantic Resolve, I believe it's called.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
let's be clear, this is in preparation for a ground war with Russia, right? Like we're really starting to get into the weeds here and start off World War III. Am I wrong? This is obviously where this is headed towards, right? I mean, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, I was going to say we had like a little light at the end of the tunnel. It seemed this past week with NATO, the NATO conference. It seemed like Zelensky was kind of getting the cold shoulder. They decided not to allow Ukraine to become a NATO member at this time. And Zelensky, of course, was very upset. And he was upset that they would even make the decision without him being present because he was not there yet to show up in his Castro uniform. And I mean, is it anything? I noticed too, I'm like, at least like he could make his boots and like his outfit a little bit torn up, or like he comes in like his full regalia is completely untouched. It's like almost like you can see the iron. When you buy new clothes and there's like that line on them on like the sleeve because it's like it's folded in a certain way and ironed in a certain way. And like his like whole uniform is like completely crisp and like cleanly ironed and his boots are clean while he's trying to signal some kind of strange, militant. Like, we know you're a comedian. Like,
Yeah,
let's
you
just
are.
call it like we see it.
He's a comedian who literally played the president of the Ukraine.
Ukraine and became the president. You can't make this stuff up. But
He always wanted to give off that notion too, that like he was right there on the front lines with the troops, like he was getting his fingernails dirty too. But like you said, he looks as
getting his fingernails dirty before his, photo shoot for Vogue. Just very
right,
difficult time. Which the
right.
photo shoot for Vogue is so funny too, because it's not like it's this photo shoot where you see like Time magazine. Like when I was a kid, we had all these old Time magazines. And actually, because the Oppenheimer movie's coming out, we had this awesome Time magazine. It's probably one of the most famous covers of Oppenheimer. It was when he was older. And I believe the 50s. And those images are so striking. But the Time magazine and National Geographic, it's like in the moment, you see the people. So you would think that Zelensky would have done a photo shoot like that, where it really showed him like in the moment, in the war room, getting the information, like looking at the screens. And instead, this photo shoot is just so silly. Like, if you see the pictures of him and his wife, and like, no hate on them, but it's a very bizarre photo shoot that's very over. It's a Vogue photo shoot. It's not a Nat Geo, Time magazine, like I said, like a very in the moment kind of photo shoot. It's very staged
I think
and
that's the magazine
almost
that George Costanza was pleasuring himself to in his parents' house when they weren't there. I think it was a copy of Vogue. I just had that
good
thought
to
pop into
know.
my
That's
mind.
good.
I'm sorry.
No,
You know
that's
me and the
okay.
Seinfeld
But
references.
yeah, so we saw this week that NATO kind of gave him the cold shoulder, and it seemed like a ray of hope, because I do want to explain that we all want to see Ukraine prevail. We want to see those soldiers come home. We want to see peace in Ukraine and with Russia. And I'm definitely not here to say that Putin is somehow um, a great person, or somebody that, I mean, yeah, he invaded their country. Like, let's just call it what it is. Was he provoked? Absolutely.
For many,
Are
many years.
Yes, yeah. Are there diplomatic exits to this? 100%. So when we saw that, it was kind of encouraging. Like, okay, we're seeing a kind of pushback to this whole Zelensky worship that's been taking place for over a year now. And I really thought it was going to begin, it was going to commence this, I guess, regime change in Ukraine that would be started by NATO, because as a lot of people were pointing out this past week, that Zelensky there was that iconic image of Zelensky kind of on his own while his wife is speaking to another foreign dignitary. And a lot of people pointed out that, yes, Zelensky, like, are you too now realizing that NATO was using you in their proxy war? That, like, you're just a pawn in a bigger game to overthrow Russia and basically their threat to a global world order. And but then we saw Biden kind of change his tune and say that NATO would be added once the war with Russia was defeated. They'd be added an hour and 20 minutes afterwards. And as he was tripping up the stairs to get on the plane,
I saw
we
that.
see this order. We see this order for 3,000 troops to be, and they said that not all of them will be heading over them, but it sounds like they're more just getting them ready to, if they need to head over to be in some European in the European theaters, from what I understood.
I think that they are most definitely sending people's sons and daughters to die in Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, I really think that that is where this is headed. And like you said, I thought that we were going to see a light at the end of the tunnel. I really thought that they were kind of pulling the rug out from this war. You know, they made their money, the war profiteers, and they figured, well, this is about as far as we can go with this now without it turning into a nuclear exchange, shall we say. But I guess not. I guess, and in a lot of ways, the West has been building up to this moment since 1945 when we
Yeah.
dropped the first atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because you had mentioned the Christopher
Oppenheimer.
Nolan's Oppenheimer film
Yeah.
at the beginning of
Yeah.
the show here. And I have mixed feelings about this film. I'm probably going to go see it. I am a Christopher Nolan fan. However, there we have been taught a lot of junk history now as it pertains to World War II, you know, since grade school. And one of the biggest pieces of misinformation that we've been taught is that the atomic bomb somehow ended World War II and ended the war in the Pacific theater. That is junk history. That is absolutely not what ended the war in the Pacific theater. What
Theater.
ended the war was Russia's entrance into Manchuria, because the Japanese had fought a war with the Russians before. They knew that now with Russia in the Pacific theater, they had absolutely no chance, because you've got to understand, the Japanese, long before we dropped the atomic bombs, they had accepted long before that the United States was capable of destroying major cities. It didn't make a difference to them whether it was one bomb, 1,000 bombs. They knew that. And let me remind everyone too that did you know that during the whatever you want to call it, the terms of surrender meeting, the bombs were not even mentioned. They were not even brought up once. We were always taught this fake history of, oh, we dropped a big bomb and that ended the war. No, that was a show of force to the Russians, who we were about to focus our energy on as soon as World War II ended,
And
to say,
create
hey,
NATO. Which
look what we can do. You see what we can
yes.
do? We can destroy whole cities now with just one bomb. That absolutely did not end World War II, and it drives me nuts as somebody who considers themselves a student of true history, when people still have this notion in their head, and they know nothing about Russia's entrance into Manchuria, and they don't know their history. And my fear about this movie is that it's going to be a purveyor of this junk history, which is just not accurate. And that's my rant.
Yeah, I think from what I understand, and I really don't know that much about the film, so I don't want to go out there and say I thought the film would be more an exploration of not necessarily, like you said, saying that I guess if you're talking about the A bomb, you're talking about Oppenheimer, you're naturally going to consider Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? Like that's just your natural steps, because that's it. That's the moment. And there might be maybe some part of the film that, like you said, interprets that, okay, that was the end of the war, or causation for the end of World War II. Absolutely. And like you said, history is typically way more, and political relations, international relations. Heck, you as a human being are more complex, and maybe I would say esoteric, as we like to say, than people, like then what we're always led to believe. We're always, everything's simplified and everything's spoon fed to us, especially in this day and age. So I would think that the film might touch upon that, but from what my understanding is, it was going to more or less focus on the exploration of that science at the time, and also Oppenheimer's struggles with, putting forth this revolutionary weapon, and also his reaction to its use in afterwards, and kind of the life he lived in in the years after that decision was made to use
I'm
it after
interested
it
to
was
see it
developed
for
and used.
sure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be good. I will actually be seeing Barbie next week. Not because I honestly want to see the Oppenheimer movie like 10 times more. But I have a 13-year-old sister, and she is like the if anybody's watched like Stranger Things, and there's like the little sister of the one kid, and she's like real like, you're doing this is what you're doing, and she's in charge and she's scary. Like that's my 13-year-old sister. So she told me months ago that she was like, we're going to see Barbie. You're taking me to see Barbie. And I was like, okay. And she's not even like a girly girl. She's a big tomboy. Just she just read Fight Club, and like
Wow.
she's super into like very um incel male, inappropriate for her age, inappropriate like she likes like American Psycho. I'm
Hmm.
kind of alarmed
She's a
that she
Patrick
saw
Bateman fan.
she's seen this. I haven't even seen this movie, but I told a friend that, and he was horrified that my 13-year-old sister saw the movie. And I said, well, at least she's not watching the Disney Channel. You know
You
what
never
I'm
saw
saying?
American Psycho?
I've never seen American Psycho. Can you
Oh,
believe
it's
that?
our kind of humor. You would
Oh,
appreciate the dark humor in it. You
you're
must
like,
watch it
you're like, this is your movie. But so
for
I
sure.
kind of appreciate her in a lot of ways. Like she's kind of very mean to me. And
Good. Somebody
she
has to be.
yeah, she does. Yeah. Somebody's got to be bring you down a few notches. She definitely does. But yeah, so a couple months back, I didn't even realize the movies would that Oppenheimer and Barbie would be competing at the box office. But she said to me, you are taking me to this movie. And then she called me a couple weeks ago and was like, when are you taking me to the beach? When are you taking me to see Barbie? So, being a typical millennial adult child, I decided that we're all going to dress. Well, I think she kind of told me we're going to dress up. So
Adult
I don't
child.
real.
I like how you said that
Yes, yeah. I don't
because it's
really
true.
own. Yeah, right.
I'm not an adult. Like,
I'm not an adult. That's what. So anyway, I'll go back to that in a second. But my so she I don't really own anything that's really pink. I only have like this is a very light pink, and I have like a peach pink shirt. So I had to like actually shop for pink things. So yeah, instead of seeing Oppenheimer, I'll be going to see Barbie. And I was kind of upset about it because I saw that they like did some kind of map that aligned with like China's view of the world. And then Warner Brothers came out and said like, oh no, we didn't do that because of China. And I thought to myself, yeah, really? Are you sure about that, Warner Brothers? And I know that it's going to probably be some kind of like radical feminist, like I don't even want to say radical feminist. Like I know that there's going to be like obnoxious feminist undertones that are going to just annoy me. So I was really upset that like she's forcing. I told her that I was like, there's going to be some kind of crazy propaganda in this, and not that there's not going to be some kind of propaganda on Oppenheimer, but like I want to see that more. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I'm willing to
yes,
take that,
there's
not
probably
yeah.
more artistic merit in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer than Barbie. Maybe your sister really likes Ryan Gosling. Did you ever think of that?
She really does like Ryan Gosling, and
He's a beautiful
so
man.
we actually got in a fight over this too because I said that Ryan Gosling is too old to play Ken. And that's because I think that there's anything wrong with Ryan Gosling, and I think that he probably is actually the best. He actually seems like he's probably does the best in that movie. Like he seems like he really got into the camp of it. You know what I'm saying? Like you can just tell by some of the previews that he really like went full bore into the camp. But I just was trying to say from if this is going to be some kind of like feminist undertones to this, don't we think that it's kind of very I'm not sure of the word, but like it's just a gender normative that like we would allow a 40-plus-year-old to play Ken, but we would never allow a 40-plus-year-old to play Barbie. Am I
How old is
wrong?
Margot Robbie?
I think she's my age. She's our age. She's like 32, 33.
Is she? She's only, wow. I don't know why I thought, because I guess in my mind she's been around
For so
for,
long.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I remember going to see The Wolf of Wall Street in 2014, which is like forever ago.
I think she
And
was probably only 24 or 25. Hold on, let me look this.
wow.
I mean, this is like we talk about World War III, international affairs, but we've got to get Margot Robbie's age right. This would just be an embarrassment
Well,
if we said
it's
something.
relevant because there's this,
She's 33 years old.
wow, so she's my age. So she and I
She's
could theoretically get married. I don't know if she's
I think it
single or
says she
not.
is married. We could
Oh,
still
to who?
theoretically get married.
Who's she married
It
to?
literally
That's
comes up when I look
annoying.
up Tom Ackerley.
I get so mad when I find out people are married, just like anybody. It's like, what are you married for? It gets under my skin. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
Well, I
Now, if they
can, but
marry,
that's a whole other psychological profile. We don't want to go off on that.
you're like, well, this isn't a better help session.
Right.
At least
There,
not
there-
today.
there's this whole argument going on Twitter surrounding Margot Robbie about whether or not she is quote mid, as the kids say. And
Please wait. I am old. Would you please translate what that means for us old elderly people?
mid meaning, not high caliber, really, not like a 10, more of like a, six-ish on the
So
scale of 1 to
I
10.
I was just talking to some of my guy friends about this, who I don't know if they're even mid.
They're probably like below mid. Well below mid.
We're gonna die if they hear. I'm
uh,
kidding. They're so cute and handsome.
sure.
But
Go ahead.
I'm just imagining them listening. Well, anyhow, you know what you are, right? We all know what we really are. So, he kind of expressed that he thought Margot Robbie was not pretty enough to play Barbie. He was like, I definitely think she's really hot or something. Like he said something, but then there was the but. You get what I'm saying? So then he was
Sure,
like,
there's an
she
asterisk there.
cannot. And so I actually think she's gorgeous.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I think she's extremely beautiful, and like captivating looking. But I think the real conversation and why this is coming up about Margot Robbie is because I don't think she has Barbie energy. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Uh,
like she doesn't have
Kind
that
of.
Barbie. Like she's gorgeous, but she's almost a little bit too muted for Barbie. I have a cousin who we've discussed who is like super MAGA. She was the one that went to like the Gays for Trump event, and she has Barbie energy to me. Like when I think of somebody like pink is like her color, like it's her, like that's
Right.
her, like hot pink. Like
She
I was like thinking,
personifies
yeah, like
hot
I was
pink.
gonna like ask her, like this actually came up at a wedding because there was a little drama at a family wedding. Because my cousin's wife said that my cousin, this other cousin who is Barbie, that Barbie cousin was wearing cousin's wife's color, pink. The cousin's wife, I don't know if that makes any sense. We'll call her Trisha, is the cousin's wife, said that Barbie was wearing her color. And Barbie was like, you're wearing my color, B. Okay. So, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she is the personification of pink. She is the personification of Barbie. And Margot Robbie's just not the personification of Barbie to me. She's just not
You know what?
that kind of over the top, like just bold pink, if that makes sense. But she's
That
gorgeous.
that does make sense, because I'm thinking about her role in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she played
Yes.
Sharon Tate, which I thought was one of her best roles, but she barely says 2 words in it. But she says so much with her eyes, and she conveys so much with her facial expressions and just her whole aura in that movie. So the more I think about it, you're right. She does not have that Barbie peppy sort of personality, I suppose.
Well, it's really just like a sensuality. I think that that's kind of, and I know that that's horrible that I guess I'm kind of saying that Barbie, which is a child's toy, has a sensuality, but like, I don't know if it's
I mean, why would
sensual.
guys be going to see this?
Yeah,
You know, why the
exactly.
hell? I mean, I'm not gonna go see it because I mean, I choose to spend my time at the movie theater with Mr. Tom Cruise. You know, I've got my tickets to see Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part One tomorrow. Can't wait. It's gonna be the event, the movie event of the summer. If Tom Cruise isn't in it, I really don't venture out to the movie theaters. But
Or if it's not a James Cameron film.
right, if it's not, well, you know what? I didn't even go see the new Avatar. I was so uninterested.
Okay, please tell me, did you watch the first Avatar?
Yes, I remember going to see the first Avatar in 3D in 2009 December. Yep.
And what were your thoughts on it?
I thought it was good, but certainly not as good as Titanic. I mean,
Hmm.
it certainly
Or
wasn't.
Terminator?
No, no, it's not as good as Terminator 2. It's not as good as Titanic. I would say maybe it's his third best movie. I certainly didn't think that it warranted 5 sequels or whatever they have in production, but I guess he and Disney have a deal going because, of course, if you go to the Animal Kingdom theme park down here in Walt Disney World, they have the whole Avatar land, which, by the way, is spectacular. There's a ride there called the Flight of Passage where you actually get on a banshee. You know those pterodactyl creatures they're flying
Yeah.
around on. You get to go on the back of a banshee and fly around Pandora. And it is truly an exhilarating experience. One of the reasons why I have my Disney World annual pass, despite who they are, shall we say. But anyway, I digress. I did not think it warranted a sequel or 5 sequels. I thought it was okay. I thought it was good. I have it on Blu-ray. I haven't watched it in a long, long time. It's not something that I regularly revisit. Is that kind of your
Yeah.
thoughts as well?
So I haven't even seen it.
No kidding.
And I was at a little event last year and we were sitting around the table and it came up and that the new one was coming out. And I said, oh yeah, the first one, it didn't seem, I don't know. It just didn't even seem like I'm not even interested in seeing. I made some kind of snarky, snide comment that I'm known
You're
for.
above it.
And
I'm
so
above Avatar.
somebody called me out and they were
Ooh.
like, you haven't even seen it. And I said, touche, you're right. I haven't seen it. And guess what? I still haven't. But I did, it was like a defining moment in my life where I was like, well, maybe I just kind of like I give a lot of hot takes and maybe I should kind of, you know, I shouldn't really talk until I know what I'm talking about. But I will follow that up with I am really good at watching trailers and knowing if I'm going to like something. So I'm going to stick with I probably wouldn't really love Avatar. And another thing is I hate over CGI. Like if it's too much CGI, I can't even watch it. Like I'm just like I'm done. Like I can't even like I when I was even a kid and we would play like Mario Kart on Nintendo 64, I was like I can't look at the screen. Like it's driving. It wouldn't make me sick or anything. It just bothered my eyes. And it was like, it just takes me out of the movie. If I'm watching, when you would watch like the Star Wars prequels, ugh, they were horrible to me because it was just so much
See, I'm a big
CGI.
prequel fan, but
Oh man, you're big of Star Wars specifically, or
Yeah, I love all of the George Lucas Star Wars films. I really dislike
I like Star Wars.
I intensely dislike the Disney Star Wars films because they do not feel like Star Wars to me in any way, shape, or form. But the prequels, I feel like they are given a bad rap. I
I'm not saying they're horrible. I just the over like actually watching them, the CGI like starts to bother me because there's so much. But
No, I know what you're saying. There certainly were a lot more practical effects in the original Star Wars films, and
yeah, I'm the kind of person that watches like Metropolis from like 1933 and I'm like amazed by the effects. And then I watch like Avatar and I'm like, this is horrible. So
you know what's wild?
not the person to listen to on this.
The movie Jurassic Park, one of my favorite films of all time, probably in my top 10, is 30 years old this year. And if you go back and watch that movie, I swear to God, the special effects in that film somehow 30 years later, like movies look worse now
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
that movie. It's truly
It's like
astonishing to me.
timeless. Uh
Yeah.
so someone I know very well, he actually is a friend of the guy who created the Tyrannosaurus Rex and created all of that. So if I ever get a chance, like
Really?
I know I might sometimes be in an email chain with him. If I am, I will say that my friend was very impressed with it.
We
Yeah,
should have him on the
I can't,
show
you
to
know,
talk geopolitics.
he would probably love it actually. So, but yeah, no, it's just when you mention it, I was like, oh, that's so funny that you're mentioning it. Yeah, he was behind, I think he was involved in filmmaking and such after that. But I mean, I don't really know him that well. Like the person I know knows him pretty well over the years. But yeah, no, you're right. Jurassic Park and the music when when the T-Rex comes in at the end and it's like in the
Oh,
building and the banner falls. I
I
mean,
tear
I get,
up. Like
yes, yes,
that movie brings me to
exactly.
tears. Like and another
Yes.
scene that's so great is when they're first entering the island on the helicopter, and then you first hear the theme that da, 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 da. Like, oh my god, that pulls at my heartstrings so much.
Uh, when I was in, when I was in Costa Rica for my honeymoon, I overheard this woman talking to her spouse or whatever at the table next to us. And she was like, we were in it was like a bay area. Um like it was there was like a big bay and it kind of like the island. I'm not the island, but the water. Like you would look out and it was you could see like all the trees and everything on the other side. And she was like, I think this is where they filmed Jurassic Park. So then I'm like sitting there, like I need it to look up. And I think a lot of it was like in Hawaii is where
I
they
think so.
filmed it. But yeah, just a classic film. I mean, really, we were so blessed as kids to grow up with like a
Oh,
lot
the
better.
90s were a magical time. Like,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
though like thinking back, knowing what I know now, um, there were certainly a lot of horrible decisions being made in the background politically, but
yes, yeah.
it's like the economy was it's like nobody really knew any better. Nobody was really tuned into that. I don't know if you can see our
I
producer's
can see
head
the producer. I just was
yeah,
about to say the producer's
yeah.
here. Be on your best behavior.
Our producer Shadow here likes to kind of check in on us mid episode and
Yeah.
make sure make sure everything's up to snuff, shall we say. But I often I really romanticize time travel, and I always think about, oh, if I can go back in time to like 1955, or if I can go back in time to 1980. Lately I've been thinking like, damn, I think I would just want to go back to like 1990, honestly, and
Yeah.
just relive that entire decade, because everything really started to turn to shit like post 9/11. Like 9/11 was like such a pinpoint moment where it's like everything after this is going to be horrible.
Yeah, that's a good point. And were you born in 89 or 90?
Yeah, I was born in August 89.
Okay, I'm August of 90. So it's pretty so when you said go back to 90, I was like, yeah, 90s 1990 baby. But you're right though. Like you were so, that is a really good, and I'm not sure. I feel like when you said that about 9/11, it's almost as if I know that, but I've never heard it actually spoken or acknowledged what you just said about 9/11, that it's almost as if that was a just a defining moment, and almost like a moment that we are never going back from. And like you said, I think that that's something that we kind of overlook. And I know for even my brothers and sisters, like some of them are so young, they don't really even remember 9/11. Like they've only learned about it. Like
Wow.
they didn't even know, like they didn't even grow up with it. But like you're right, like we're living in like a post 9/11 world. And to be honest with you, I also believe it's not just 9/11, but we have such a breakneck pace of technology that has overtaken our lives, that we really can't overlook that also. And I think that um, when you were saying about 9/11, it also kind of started off, and I don't want to take away from the Gulf Wars, but it began the war on terrorism, correct?
Yeah.
Like there was a little bit before that with, like I said, with George number one. But really that's like where things started. And like you said, I think that you and I both grew up with, we've discussed this, like World War II veteran grandfathers. And we had like a lot, and I know Vietnam was kind of a turning point for that too, that it was like this war that people didn't really that we shouldn't have been involved in, that we didn't really understand. So let's not, forget, neglect to mention Vietnam and Korea. um but really this war on terror, which became like a completely, just like a misnomer, and we saw like this lie about the weapons of mass destruction. We saw, and also too, like I remember being younger and having conservative influences, and I'm sure you might agree with this, that it was like, oh, it all seemed warranted at the time. Like it all seemed
Oh
kind of like,
yeah.
yes, like
There
this
was
is
an American flag on every street corner, every house, every storefront, and even people who were more democratic leaning, like my family. Growing up traditionally, this was back in the days where the Democrat Party, people associated that more with working class individuals. So we were always more of a Democrat family. But even then, I remember, my parents watching George W., rile up the troops on TV, and they're like, yeah, get him, George, let's go. Like I can distinctly remember that. Everybody
yes,
was
well,
kind of united on the same page. And look where we're at now. It's a very stark contrast.
I have to say, shout out to our number one fan, Miss my mom. We'll just call her mom. I remember the day that they I think they bombed Baghdad. Do you remember those images that were um like it was all like night vision. So everything was like in like, like black and green and kind of like very raw or very
Yeah. I
like
remember coming
anti,
home from confirmation practice
yeah.
actually, and finding out that now we were in Iraq. So this had to have been, what was that, 2003, right?
Yes, do that. Yes, yeah. So I was
May of
12 or
2003, if
13.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So I was probably like 12 years old. And for whatever reason, we were at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather was the World War II veteran. And we were there, and I remember like watching the footage come across the screen, probably on CNN or Fox News. And my mom said to her dad, who's since passed, she said when Bush got on the screen and spoke, she just said, he just seems too excited about this. I mean, so I will say that my mom, like, even though she was a conservative individual, she was always a
Based.
very, yeah, she was always
Always
based.
based.
She was also very like, she's always encouraged us to think for ourselves and not follow the herd and not conform. So even if conservatives were saying it, or even if Christians were saying it, like we should still be skeptical.
Skeptical and
She's
skeptical.
a big trust no one, kind of person. So, so I remember her commenting to my grandfather that she was just like, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't feel right. And he just seems too excited about it. Like he just seems, and I think even when I was like kind of a teenager, my mom was never like, she was never like she was the more political individual of my parents. She was, which I don't think is always the norm. I think sometimes your father is more of the politically involved person. My dad was just too busy for all of it. But my mom was way more political, way more like, that's why I ended up working in talk radio, because all we did is listen to talk radio. So, all Christian radio and talk radio 24/7 at my house. And, so yeah, my mom was never really like, I remember people protesting the war, being a teenager, and people just in our local, in Carbon County. We're both from Carbon County, at the courthouse. And she was like very supportive of that. Like she wasn't going to go protest the war, but like she understood where they were coming from. She knew that it was like unnecessary, and she knew that something wasn't right. And now, my mom has a son, and I have a brother, a 21-year-old brother who's in the US Navy. And like, he's very concerned. He's very, very concerned about
As he
this.
should be.
And, I don't want to blow up his spot, but like he was at a wedding. He was home on leave for a couple days, and he was at a wedding with our family. And we have like a huge family, and it's usually really fun. And he started to get like emotional. And I was like, oh, John, what's going on? Why are you upset? And he really wasn't. Just, I think part of him was upset because, I mean, he's young, and this is like the first time he didn't go away to college. Like he went away to boot camp, and he
Yeah.
was back home. And I think like part of him was just upset, having to go back and not be with his family. And we kind of explained to him like, hey, we don't all get together and see each other that often. Like, but make sure when you get leave that you can come home and see your family and come home for weddings. But then he said to me, he's like, I'm afraid we're going to war. Like he was like, it wasn't just, I have to go back to the other side of the country. Like I'm afraid that I'm going to be
He's tuned
deployed.
in.
Yes, he's super tuned in. Yeah. And like, and there's a part of me, and my other brother is in the Coast Guard. And like, if this is going to be a war that takes place against China, against Russia, and if you've seen, like, the Coast Guard has had some escalation with has been monitoring Chinese and Russian marine vessels, not just the Navy. I mean, this is something that the Coast Guard would even, which isn't necessarily usually not, it's actually now part of Department of Homeland Security. Um, it's not under the military anymore. But they would be on the defensive. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like, this is very close to me. And I'm kind of starting to see where I used to think, just like when I was a kid, like you would see like the Vietnam, when John Kerry ran and they talked about him, and he's a whole nother story. I understand that. I'm not going to sit there and, I get it. But do you understand why these people protest the war? They're like, because, Ted Cruz, not the Ted Cruz, but Lindsey Graham, who I don't think has children, and Chuck Schumer, their children and their grandchildren are not going to be sent over there to settle a dispute that we shouldn't even be involved
Right.
in the first place. Two, I mean,
They're the
I've been
fortunate sons.
I literally know a Ukrainian. I went to Ukraine in 2014, and one of the children, he was like 13 at the time. He's now fighting in this war, and it's just disgusting to see. It's terrible to see that these Ukrainian children, I don't want to say children, but I'm saying, these Ukrainian men and women, especially young men and women, are being sacrificed for what? For Klaus Schwab and Biden? Like, what? This is senseless. And I think what you really hit the nail on the head about 9/11 and what we were talking about, the war on terror, is that we saw over time, not immediately, but we saw over time conservatives wake up to the reality that like not all war is good, and
It took a
not
while.
ever, and not, yes,
It was a
did it
slow
not,
burn.
and I think that that's a big part of it. And I think that also 9/11 combined with the just the level of information that is readily available to us. We have to think back in 2001. You used a dial-up computer. I mean, how much did we really go on the internet? And now we have so much more information. Um, we've had so much more revealed to us that we realize we've been kind of sold a bill of goods, and we've been lied to by the left and the right. I think that 9/11 and the period after it and the years that have followed, we've been exposed to so much more information, and we've really, like, if we're at a point that if you don't recognize how many lies we've been fed, like how much nonsense is going on, how the uniparty is acting wholly and only to enrich themselves and their friends. I mean, you're just,
You're not
I
going
mean,
to wake up.
yeah, you're not going to wake up. And honestly, I kind of am jealous of you.
Yeah, in a sense, it must be,
Yeah, it must be nice, you know?
ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would love to just be like, I'm just going to see Barbie and I'm not worried about what the map looks like. And I'm just going to go to Target and go buy my new Joanna Gaines outfit,
I,
clothing, or house or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it
I know a
must
lot
be
of people like that.
nice.
I have friends and family that are like that, and just
What's wrong with us? What
blissfully
is wrong with
unaware where we're honed in on all of this and miserable. And now, listen, I know that we have to wrap up in a little bit, but I have two things in particular that I
Yes,
wanted to
yeah. So
say.
we're supposed to talk about World War III, and instead we started talking about like James Cameron again and Barbie and
Barbie.
Margot and
Well,
if like, who are we to judge Margot Robbie's looks? But here we are.
well, we try and hit on all the important subjects of the week, but we're
Yes,
we're
yeah.
we're closing off on a very serious issue here. Number one, I cannot imagine being a serviceman or woman who is enlisted, and like, number one, boy, if you still to have the gumption and the fortitude to enlist in the military at this crucial point in our history. I mean, God bless you, because I can understand why certain people would not want to enlist in the state of the country. Like, I'm gonna go fight and die for this. Like that, I can see it from that
I'm gonna
perspective.
go for the commander in grief, tripping down the stairs,
Right.
saying that he
I'm
lives
gonna
in Ireland. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Sniffing children. He was just today, he was just like sniffing this little girl in Finland or
I saw
something
that
bizarre.
photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. But number one, I know that our they're really having a recruiting problem
Yes, yeah.
currently in the military, and it would not surprise me in the slightest if they invoke the Selective Service Act. Is that what you would call it? Where
I thought when you sent me that White House declaration yesterday about the 3,000 troops in to Europe, I thought that that's what I at first, when I first read it, I thought it was talking about selective service. I thought it
that's
was
what
a
I thought it
draft.
was
Yeah.
too. I got scared. I I don't know
You're
if
like,
it's
that's
still
okay for them to go to Europe. I'm not going. You're like,
well,
off to Canada. Hey, mom and dad, I'm moving to Canada.
Well, I told you, I'm more into the Pacific theater. Like, I feel like once we get involved with China, see, I'm used to a warm climate now. And
Oh,
as
okay.
a student of history, I know all about the Russian winters. I have no intention of
Yes,
being
yeah.
involved with that. I'm more of a Pacific theater, jungle climate kind of a guy at this
Yeah,
stage in
you're
my
more
life.
like, "Well, I'll go to Taiwan. I'll sign
Yeah,
up for
right.
that."
Sure.
My husband and I went to Taiwan a couple years ago, and I don't know how serious he is about this, but he said that if China invaded, he would go fight for Taiwan. And my cousin's wife was from Taiwan. She was like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, I think he's kind of serious about it because he just we loved Taiwan. The people were like so cool and so welcoming. I mean, I like adored it. It was so much like I would consider like I if I had to move somewhere, I would totally move to Taiwan, but maybe not
Maybe not now.
now. Maybe not
Right.
now. But anyway, so sorry.
No,
So
no.
you're all for getting drafted if it means you get to go to a
Yeah,
tropical location.
I will give it serious consideration. Not that I would have a choice, as long as it was a more of a tropical location, more used to what I'm used to now. But in all seriousness, so I'm concerned about them invoking the Selective Service Act. And number two, and here has been my thought for a while. I know everybody's all hyped up about the election, it's election season. I truly think that there is a chance that we will not get to the 2024 elections. And the groundwork for this has already been laid by Zelensky. Remember, he announced a week or so ago, I guess it is now, that, Ukraine, normally they would have an election coming up. But he said, since we're in a time of war now, there are not going to be any elections. Is it possible that we can get deeper into this? And, the next thing you know, we're involved in a ground war with Russia, and you've got Biden up there announcing that the 2024 elections are suspended. I know it sounds outlandish. I think that that is a distinct possibility.
Well, I have to say, I'm not one for protests, but if that were to be the case, I'd be in the streets. Like that's definitely grounds for
Would that
protest. I
light a
don't even care
fire,
if
though,
they
under
I
people?
I at this point I don't know. Like sometimes I think to myself, Jesus could literally come down a pier and people would just keep looking at their
Meh.
TikTok videos. They'd be like,
Right.
"Oh, whatever." You know, I actually just saw this tweet and it was so funny. Let me read this to you real quick because it was really funny. So somebody I know put out this tweet that it's like your predictions for like the end of the year by the end of the year. And this guy wrote this: Jesus will come back to earth to save mankind. Unfortunately, the Democrats will imprison him forever because he appeared to be standing on a BLM mural painted on the road. Afterwards, there is a gay trans orgy on the mural to honor it and the imprisonment of Jesus, the bigot.
Jesus locked up with the J6 protesters in a
Yes,
in a
yeah.
DC
That's
cell.
no trial. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
about right, actually. But yeah, I guess that is something. I guess if that were the case, we would go protest and then we would get arrested, be on the bus to the re-education camp. So we would be able to meet some of our listeners. So we'll all be
Yeah.
together on the re-education bus to our little camp that Biden's going to put us in. Although I wonder about Biden. We should do a show. Maybe we'll do a show on predictions next week, but I sincerely doubt that Biden is making it to 2024. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
I think you could be onto something, but again, I also think there's that possibility where he still is the New World Order avatar, shall we say, but elections are suspended due to an emergency declaration, possibly maybe the Insurrection Act being invoked.
Yeah, well, I believe my mom made the estimation that Biden is actually being used by the globalist agenda to pretty much get the people to a position where they welcome a new world order, that they think that this leadership is so incompetent and the way they've mismanaged our government will gladly go over to, a Klaus Schwab figure. But
Or
I don't know,
Mr. Newsom.
America, yeah, America is an enigma though. You know what I'm saying? Like America is we're not Europe. We're not like really any country that's ever existed on the face of the earth. And we're not, we're kind of unpredictable. We're an interesting place. So, like you said with COVID, there's a lot of people that kind of woke up because of COVID. And I'd say, like you said, they were kind of, okay, we're just chugging along, living our life, going to Friday night football, taking our kids to camp and just shopping at Target, working on whatever we want to do. And I really believe that COVID shook people to their core, because I think they recognize that the military, sorry, we didn't get to that point, thank God. Um, but we didn't have martial
Yet
law. But yeah, it's exactly. But I
we will.
think they realized like the government really could exert a lot of control over your life, and that some of this new world order, or some of this, some of that fringe stuff that was on Coast to Coast, or like the recesses and the different corners, like the low end or the high ends of the radio dial, some of the talk that they would hear was just so absurd. There was no legitimacy to it. The government's not going to do that. That's never going to happen. And it all feels kind of like a dream. Like, you kind of forget that they locked down our businesses, that they, mandated, companies that people had to have an experimental vaccine. It's really great. And they did such a good job convincing us that, I mean, I legitimately thought we were going to be, it was going to be like The Walking Dead. I honestly believed that that's how lethal this disease was going to be.
A lot of
Um,
people thought that way.
yeah.
Not
And
me, of
sometimes,
course, but
yes, yeah, I did. I was like, I just got out of the hospital. I'm like, I'm not going back there.
I
But
only
uh,
kept
but
up the charade because of guilt from my mother. Her and my dad were
yeah,
like, I can't believe you have elderly parents and you're not. And I'm like, Mom, no, you don't understand. This is a globalist takeover. They've been planning this for years now. It's all in their white
you're like,
papers.
that's the mark of the beast.
Yeah. Yeah. You know me. Like, I stopped wiping down my groceries the second day. I'm like, to hell with this. I'm just putting
Yeah.
everything away. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, no, I mean, but and sometimes I think too, did China, like, remember those videos that came out at the beginning and the people were
everybody
like falling?
passing out.
Did China conduct those videos on purpose and send those out to make us think that that was the case? Like, did they just send, do you
Did
get
they
what I'm
use a
saying?
deadlier bioweapon on those people and film that and leak the videos? Food for thought.
There's a lot to consider. I don't want to go on we're wrapping this up. We don't want to go on the COVID, and people have covered it so extensively. I can't even, they're like the ivermectin and the hydroquinone and this person and the mRNA. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about anymore. I don't
Wuhan and
move on. Yeah. Gain of
Fauci. And
function and Fauci. And
it's so
I
exhausting.
get
I,
it.
I
It's so
just want to play like Pokemon Red
yes.
on Game Boy. Like, you know,
Can we just go back to 1994 for God's sakes?
please.
X-Files came out. Life was
Oh,
good.
things were so much simpler. You ordered
Things,
your wrestling pay-per-views on a Sunday night. You had the little cable box, but okay. In all seriousness, this is a good place to wrap it up here. If you've made
yes,
it this
yeah.
far, thank you all so much for listening. Click that subscribe button on Rumble. Give us a like. And I think that's everything. Karen, anything you want to close with?
No, I just hope everybody stays safe and that we live to see freedom for another week.
Alrighty, that's a great way to end it. So on that note, we shall see you next week right here on Re-Education Camp. Take care.